Hello and welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this our fourth season, we're looking at Kenneth Branagh's 2011 film, Thor. I'm Matthew Fox from the Superhero Ethics Podcast.
And I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And today we're talking about Minute 103, which begins coming up through the clouds into Asgard and ends with Sif and Frigga comforting each other. Joining the show, as every day this week, is Will Freeland from the Hype Is My Superpower podcast. Will, yesterday you told us a little about what got you started in Marvel Comics. What was your relationship with Thor before seeing this movie? Was he... you were talking about how much you love Peter Parker as the everyman. Thor is not quite that. So I'm wondering, was he...
No, he is not the everyman.
Was he a little lower in your own pantheon, or where did he fit in your comic reading?
He's not in my top 3 heroes. But that's fine. I have so much fun reading his comics because of the godly craziness that happens in Jason Aaron's run or Straczynski's run.
Yeah.
Jason Aaron's run is insane, and Jason Aaron has this hard on for putting gods through the ringer because they can take it. It's one of my favorite comics to read lately. I'll be real honest, but the character Thor himself, I like him, but I've never really related to his story very well.
Yeah.
That's fine. He's a fun read. I have plenty of comics I can suggest to people that want to read some Thor.
That's awesome. All right, we'll have a lot more of that right after this.
We're getting close to the end of the season, and after this season, we'll have some hiatus episodes before we start the next one. If you want to tune into those hiatus episodes, you've got to be a member, so go ahead and get signed up. You can go to truestory.fm/Marvel Movie Minute. You can find out what we offer to our patrons. It's only $5 a month, or you can get a discount if you join at the annual rate. Thanks.
Welcome back. So again, we're having this trip back up to Asgard, and this time it's a lot shorter of a shot than we got last time, but we get this kind of interesting pan up, and then it slowly starts to rotate around the side. What'd you all see in the way the shot was done, especially kind of, I think there's a lot that we see, but there's a lot we don't see.
Well, we don't see the floating buildings. They've only been in that one time, and I am very curious about them still. This one, it's a beautiful shot. I mean, it's that kind of that low sun. It very much looks like the golden hour here as well. But it also feels just kind of like a modeling flyby. When we first came into Asgard, we could see the people walking around. We could see kind of flags blowing in the wind. This one just looks very static. It moves pretty quickly. You don't really have a chance to see people, but it feels like just something that they designed just to let's do a flyby through the city to see what it looks like. Which, I mean, it's fine. It's a really nice kind of tour through the city, but it very specifically has no life in it, and I don't know if that was part of the specific intention or budget decision. Who knows?
There's no green in Asgard.
Oh yeah, it's true.
It's all gold.
Kind of wonder what they eat.
It's kind of because it's just weird thinking to other scenes that we get in Asgard in future movies. They make it a lot more lived in, for one, and then there's a lot more trees, way more populated. Maybe people go to bed before sundown.
Right, they're all sleeping. There are trees. They're really hard to see because of that light, but it's a very weirdly unpopulated shot.
I also think it's interesting that we don't see the wreckage of the observatory at all, or where that was. And given a shot we're going to get in tomorrow's minute, I think I understand why, because it saves the power for that. But I think it's noteworthy that we don't see that at all. So then we come to this feast, and we've got Sif and the Warriors 3 kind of bantering.
I just want to point out first, they cut to this wide shot of the feast, And it's at a table that's not the table where the Warriors 3 and Sif are sitting. Like, if you look at this wide shot, like, they are not at this table. It's very peculiar, and I'm not sure why they
It's a small table, too.
Yeah, it's
you'd think Asgard would have a larger than 12-person
They have a lot of these tables. Like when we saw the dining room before, when Thor flips a table, there were other tables around the room. So I guess maybe they're just at a different table, but it's odd that we just don't start with their table.
I think I think there's a reason for it. My sense is that it's to give a sense of the scale, that this is not just the Warriors 3 and Thor and his friends talking, that like all of Asgard has come out for this grand celebration.
Maybe that's why no one's outside.
Yeah, that's all possible. You know, the game is on. No one's, you know. And I think there's a beautiful counterpoint that's happening here, because they're all like, they're feasting. Volstagg has to have food in both hands because, haha, let's make fun of fat people. Not my favorite dynamic in the movie, but there's a kind of like the fun banter that I think a lot of our guests have talked about happens in the comics a lot that we haven't really gotten. And we'll talk about the specific things that are said in a moment. But to me, what really struck me is that they're having this feast while the music is the exact same sad, contemplative music. Because to me, that kind of feels like we're seeing that these characters are celebrating, but we, the audience, know better. We know that actually a tragedy has occurred. And so it's harder for us to celebrate, and we'll see if some of the characters feel the same. What would you get out of that counterplay between the celebration and the music?
I guess well, like watching like Volstagg be, you know, life of the party and making light of the pain that he may or may not be feeling inside. And you know, the whole do not mistake my appetite for apathy. That's one of my like favorite lines. But I guess that's kind of the Viking or warrior approach to, you know, tragedy, is like, why focus on the bad when we can celebrate the good? And,
right.
You know, we're still alive. We're still living a grand life. Let's celebrate that and distract ourselves from the pain. And so like, it's a very classic kind of Warriors thing, and in the comics that's very much Volstagg's role a lot, is being that distraction, and I think it works.
What you're saying, I think, is exactly what's going on here, where we're seeing the joy of the moment. They're back in their lives, but that contemplative music that, I mean, really their conversation between Volstagg and Fandral as they're talking at the table is buried kind of under the music. So we're focusing on the music and the emotion in this moment, because really, I mean, because this is Thor, right? We're not watching the Warriors 3 movie. It's the Thor movie. And we're like, that music is the connection. We just left Midgard. We're connecting it back here, but really it's connecting to Thor specifically, as we'll see in just a second, and what Thor is feeling. And so I love that, the way that this plays out, because it really does give us a sense, without showing Thor right at the start of this scene, we're feeling what Thor is feeling, and we're seeing this joy and everything, but it's like we're seeing it kind of through Thor's eyes, where it's like, this looks like a lot of fun, but you know, there's something missing here. And so I love the way that it's put together.
Yeah, I think that is such an important part of it, because you point out with Thor, and we'll later see that Thor, Frigga, and Odin, none of them are at this feast, and they're all kind of in these like contemplative moments. And I feel like I don't say trope in a bad way, because I don't think it's overused, but I feel like this is a dynamic you often see in movies like this, where like everyone is celebrating, but our main protagonist, they know they're focused more on the sadness. Or even just like a deeper emotion. Like to me, the defining thing that I think of this is in Return of the Jedi at the end, where everyone is celebrating, and in the true version, they are singing Yub Nub, because that will always be the true version. Also, Han shot first, just while I'm on the subject. But they're all celebrating, but Luke isn't with them. You know, Luke is thinking about Darth Vader and his father and all of this. And it's just a wonderfully poignant moment of kind of like, he's not part of the celebration because he knows more and we, the audience, know more. And I feel like this scene is very much in that tradition.
Yeah, I love that connection that you brought there. I feel like there is a lot of that contemplative retrospective as they look back. Like, we've succeeded but we've lost important things along the way.
Right. Now, just one other thing I want to say about the feast before we start talking about Thor and his walking away. Andy, you reminded me that sitting next to Sif is Walt Simonson and his wife, which is really important because who's Walt Simonson?
Walt Simonson is sitting next to Sif having a grand old time. His wife is actually not next to him, but is actually next to Volstagg.
Okay.
She's Louise Simonson. Walt Simonson, most notably, both of them are comic book people. Walt Simonson most notably wrote the Thor comics from 83 to 87. The whole thing with Beta Ray Bill he came up with, but he'd worked on X Factor, Fantastic Four, also worked on stuff over in DC like Manhunter and just other things. I actually wrote some Star Wars comics and Alien and things like that. So all over the place as far as the types of stories that he wrote. But his wife Louise has been in comics as long, if not longer, than him. I mean, she was in comics forever. Like Conan the Barbarian, Power Pack, New Mutants, Superman, the Man of Steel, and they collaborated on X Factor together. That's the one that they had worked on for a long time. And so this was kind of, a great way to have Walt come in, just like we had JMS have his little cameo earlier in the film. This is Walt's chance to kind of have his moment here in Asgard at the feast along with his wife. So just a fantastic little, another round of kind of creator cameos that we get. So it's nice to see them here.
I love when movies and TV shows do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's so great.
To me, that's like the perfect example of an Easter egg where if you know, you know, and if you don't, you're not missing anything. Yeah. But it now makes me wonder, I don't know if either of you know, because that's such a beautiful way of honoring the people who've created the story that you're now telling a new version of. Do we see that in I don't remember any Iron Man writers being talked about showing up in cameos in the Iron Man or any black, do you know of any other MCU movies where they have like people who help write or draw the comics at important moments show up as cameos in the movie?
Jim Starlin shows up in he's in the little counseling group that Steve Rogers is doing at the beginning of Endgame.
Yeah, same with one of the Russos.
Yeah, right, exactly. So they pop up there. I'd have to go back and kind of look and scour to see if there were some other creators. I feel like I've heard of some other ones, but it is one of those things, like, unless you really are looking for it, you just might miss it. So it's entirely possible that I've just missed some of them.
Yeah, usually it's like name drops, like it's the name of streets or like license plates that are references to the comics and stuff. But you don't typically get... you don't frequently get those kinds of like in-person cameos.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. We all know that Stan Lee gets his cameo every single time,
right.
or did until he passed away, so sadly. But yeah, it's kind of awesome. Some other comic book people get that. So let's then talk about Thor. So he's walking past. He's kind of smiling at everyone, but he's just not in the celebratory mood. And we get this wonderful shot of Sif, kind of like, slowly kind of watching him walk away. And I said, we may have some disagreement here, but I feel like this has been a theme throughout the movie, is that we keep getting these little moments of Sif showing that she's always kind of a little more aware. Like, there's that thing where, like, if you've got a crush on someone, but you're hiding it, you're just always a little more aware of where they are in a room all the time. And I like that it's so understated. It's not her being the jealous woman or anything like that. But you definitely, I feel like the movie's conveyed throughout the whole thing. Like, Sif has feelings for him that are either he's just totally blind to, or they're not requited. But she's carrying a torch that's not really going anywhere right now.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that, because I agree that it is kind of there if you look for it, but you can also see it where it's like, she's one of the friends and she's the one who is just the more aware and sympathetic of them, who's paying attention to things, like when they're first chatting in the when he's trying to convince everybody to go to Jotunheim with him. Like, you just don't get that sense that there's kind of a little hint of romantic attraction. She just seems like another one of the team. And so, yeah, I guess it's there from time to time, but also it just feels like just a buddy sort of thing. And
That's
so if it is there, it's, I don't know. I struggle if they were intentionally trying to put stuff there or if it's just the read, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like they left it for this first movie. They left it kind of open to write it as she's aware because she is carrying a torch for Thor, or she's aware because she is just that strong of a warrior that she's always aware of her surroundings. Whereas like with the Warriors 3, they always have each other's backs. Sif as a warrior alone, she has to watch her own back. And so she's got to be more aware of the surroundings.
Well,
I don't know.
If nothing else, it certainly seems like she has a higher emotional intelligence than the Warriors 3. There's been a couple times where like
Certainly.
they're still in party mode and she gets the emotional depth of what's happening there. And yeah, it may also be like, if I remember correctly, in the second movie, her feelings are more talked about. And so I may be kind of reading that back into this, but certainly I feel like at least there's enough in here to set up what happens in the second movie.
Right.
And Will, that's actually a good question. What's their dynamic like in the comics, both in terms of like, is there the romantic aspect, but also just like, does she have that kind of higher emotional intelligence level than the Warriors 3?
I feel like where it's at now is, for lack of a better explanation, it's like it's an acknowledged love from Sif to Thor. Thor loves Sif, but not romantically, as most adults will acknowledge. There's different kinds of love, and they will always be there for each other. They always stick their backs out for each other, and they have a stronger bond together than Thor does with most other Asgardians. But in all the comics that I've read, she's not a love interest. She's not something that he is pursuing a relationship with. Also in the comics, Sif and Heimdall are siblings, and they kind of botched that when they decided to make Idris Elba the bouncer of Asgard. But that's fine. But in the comics it's very similar to this, but I know that Sif, I believe in the past, like in the 80s and 90s, they had a relationship, I believe. But as it is now, since their rebirth in Straczynski's run with Asgard being in Oklahoma, it is not a thing.
Makes sense. Well, and certainly we know that, in the mythology, Sif is Thor's wife. So there's always that kind of like little thing just hanging over the head of it too.
Yeah, right.
So he kind of walks on and he gets to his mother and they share this kind of nice moment where he kind of like touches her and holds her hand for a second and then walks off. Which is something I noticed, by the way, in this. Every named woman that we've really met in this movie watches Thor walk away. Like Jane, I guess, watches him fly away. Here, Sif and Frigga are watching him walk away. And him and Sif and Frigga have this nice kind of moment where Sif is offering Frigga sort of emotional support. I'm so sorry for your loss. Interesting, I think, that she's the only one who's acknowledging that of everybody. And then Frigga, though, starts, like, she puts out a hand as though she's comforting Sif. What do you all think of that last kind of interaction between the two of them?
It's, they're characters that I really enjoy, and I love this little moment between them. I love watching Frigga. I love that of all of the Asgardians, she gets fantastic outfits, different ones every time, unlike anyone else. It's like Frigga always has something cool to wear. I just love it. Although Sif, actually, I don't know, that odd little collar thing that she has, I think is really neat that she has in this kind of outfit in this moment. But there is this nice connection that we have here. And I guess what I like about it the most is that we don't really, Odin and Frigga are king and queen. We don't see a lot of interaction of other people with them other than each other, and so having this little moment here, or like in a royal capacity where Odin is on the throne and somebody's talking to him or something, and so I don't know, there's this moment here of like, I find it really interesting that she's, literally kind of reaching out to the queen in this particular moment. And is it like something that you're allowed to do? I don't know, but I love that she does it. And I love how Frigga reacts in a way of accepting, and I find it to be a kind of a touching, beautiful moment.
Yeah, I kind of read that as like Sif treating Frigga as the queen, and just trying to be as like knightly or professional as she can, hiding her own emotions and looking out for the queen, just being like, I'm so sorry for your loss because I know you lost a son, this, that, and the other. And Frigga reaching out to Sif is like breaking down that wall of professionalism, just being like, I know you care about Thor. This is the scene that to me speaks the most to Matthew's point of Sif holding a torch for Thor.
Very much so,
and
yeah.
Frigga just being like, I know you're grieving for Thor and with Thor. Like, let me comfort you as much as you're comforting me.
Is it I know you're not here for Loki?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I think it's very intentional. Like, I think there is something beautiful about the fact that it is Sif who had the most conflict with Loki, who goes to Frigga to say, like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And again, it's that emotional intelligence. Like, Volstagg and the rest of them, they're not thinking in those terms. They're just thinking, we won. We didn't die. Huzzah. Let's eat and drink. Which, not a bad attitude to have. But yeah, I think to me, it's that this moment is what really confirms to me that the look that Sif gave 30 seconds ago is supposed to be a little bit of longing and loss, because, and we'll get more to this in the next minute, I think Frigga definitely understands that and kind of understands, what Sif is going through.
Well, I mean, Loki used to cut her hair when she slept.
But she gets revenge for that in the Loki TV show. So
Exactly. And that's likely why, they have a little more of an extended scene that's similar to this in the second film, because this is here and allowing for that kind of pining to be kind of opened up a little more. So, and, as we've said, hopefully there will be that opportunity to explore that more in the fourth film as it comes out soon.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just a really kind of poignant way to wrap up the minute. Any other last comments any of us have about what we see here?
I just have to point out this. We didn't talk about kind of what Volstagg is saying, and it's just it is one of these moments that we have where it feels very much like the sort of banter that we've talked about with some of our guests that you get a lot from the Warriors 3. Volstagg says, "And then with a mighty bellow, I flew into the giant metal creature and laid him low." And then Fandral pipes in, "Is that another way of saying you fell on your huge ass?" And Volstagg says, "As a matter of fact, falling was a tactic lulling the destroyer." And, it's like, I kind of like the way that they're talking here. Like, this banter is really fun. It's a little disappointing. I mean, I get story-wise why it's buried under the music. That's not the focus of the scene here. But I like the moment with these characters. Like, it actually gives me some better sense of them as characters. And I think it's an important moment, especially because this is our picture wrap for Ray Stevenson, Tadanobu Asano, and Josh Dallas as Volstagg, Hogan, and Fandral. This is the last chance that we'll get to see these three actors working together, because Fandral is going to be changing hands as far as the actors go. And it's the last time for them to appear in this film. So I don't know. I'm a little melancholic about it, because I of the characters in the film, I didn't like a lot of stuff that they had in here. I didn't like a lot of stuff that was in the deleted scenes and in the script. And I can't help but feel like there still was a disservice that they could have really done more with these characters to give them more life in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
What's your sense of the Warriors 3? I mean, are you a fan of them in the comics?
Yes and no. Like the Warriors 3. So Hogan and Fandral don't get a lot of screen time, and like the Warriors 3 are very much a unit. You get one, you get the set kind of a thing. But they've done a lot with Volstagg. Like Volstagg was set up by Loki to do the whole Siege crossover. But then more recently, Volstagg got he got Thor's hammer from Ultimate Marvel, from Earth 1610, and he became the War Thor, and he was basically like a berserker rage Thor. And that was he basically lost it. He got he's the only one that survived a very devastating attack while he was surrounded by a bunch of Asgardian children. It was dark, but Volstagg I've liked because Jason Aaron's done a lot of work with him, but Fandral and Hogan, like, I couldn't tell you much of anything about either of them.
Yeah. It's I do think that, I think there would be a very interesting sort of character beats you could have added. And although, as you talked about, a lot of it was written in the script, I think it's probably better that was left out. I will say one of the things that just in this conversation, I realized this moment gives us is, I do think Thor is having that, like, I'm set apart because he's feeling grief about Loki and everything that's happened, and grief about not seeing Jane again and breaking the bridge. I also, though, think I have to imagine that at the start of this movie, Thor would have been right there telling the tall tales, making himself look as good as possible. And sort of everything he's gone through it's kind of a growing up moment. He sees them like they're still kind of teenagers who are joking around and having fun, and he's now grown past that. And so there might also be that's a little bit part of why he can't join them in that anymore.
Yeah, I see that.
All right, well, with that, let's wrap up. So, Will, we've talked about the podcast, talked about the Discord. Is there anything else that you're up to these days, or where people can find you? Are you tweeting or the like?
I technically I have a Twitter. I am not active on it, but I am trying to use my Instagram to promote my Twitch more because it's the same name. Just happens to be that way because that was my go-to name for a long time. It's like my gamer tag on Xbox, and so feel free to go and follow me on Instagram. I haven't posted in a little bit, but I'll post today to talk about the recording for this or something. But
and just remind our listeners, what is the name of that?
Silver Dreamer, Silver with a Y.
Okay.
SYLVERDREAMER. Yeah, go and find me.
Nice.
Find me pretty much anywhere. Look for that. I'm the only one that ever uses that tag.
And I will say again, like looking at the Legos in the background, that Millennium Falcon looks like just such incredible detail. I had a Millennium Falcon when I was a kid that was like plastic. It wasn't Lego. So knowing that's a Lego thing behind you is just amazing to me. Well, definitely check that out.
We have a lot of fun on Twitch.
Awesome. Definitely check that out. If you want to hear more of my podcasts, I'm at theethicalpanda.com. There you can find all the stuff on the Superhero Ethics podcast that both Will and his partner Steve have been on many times and are going to be on many times again. The Star Wars Universe podcast, where we've wrapped up the Book of Boba Fett. We're doing episode by episode coverage of that. A lot of great things going on there. And of course, this podcast is part of the Next Reel family of podcasts. Go to thenextreel.com. You can find great information on all the great things going on there, and hopefully even become a member. So on behalf of myself, Andy, Will, thank you all so much for being listeners, and have a great day.
Bye.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is One Last Ride by Martin Puringer. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for the show.